In my magistrate court trial, I was defined as a copbaiter, and the judge ruled that label was relevant to my illegal parking ticket. I don't quite see the connection myself. Is everyone who gets a parking ticket now a copbaiter? If you own a car, suddenly you could be called copbait. You have copbait. This court called me a copbaiter to further solidify my conviction. If this was the 1950s, the government could have accused me of being a communist, and that would have given them all the reason they needed to convict me of any other crime. What's next? Technology seems to change the values of the court. Take a look at pornography from the 60s, and anything naked that was published was called obscene and illegal. Anything. Okay, all porn publishers were charged with something by the government. Back then, you could go to prison for having porn. But now that it's so widespread, there are only just limitations on certain porn. So the defiance of technology changed the court's perception. How do people define cop baiting? The short answer is that there are different levels of it. The most extreme way may be to leave little clues for the cop to follow you to a targeted location where you can then execute your plan to take them out. You attract the cops with things that will trigger them into an investigation. Maybe you could leave dead bodies laying in certain places to draw the cops into whatever trap you have set up. But this is the most extreme cop baiting approach and far from what I would ever do. Maybe if a group of thugs was getting pursued by a cop, one of them would put more effort into getting caught to allow his friends to get away. You turn yourself into bait that is easier to catch and let the cops nibble on your lure for a while as your buddies get away. But this isn't what I'm doing either. My cop baiting is much less criminal, if criminal at all. People might assume that a cop baiter is trying to get their revenge. Like with the First Amendment auditors, okay? Are they out there just to get their revenge standing in front of police stations? Maybe somebody waits for the right time to strike without any bait. Do spiders put baits in their webs? They just set up traps in strategic locations. But in my case, cop baiting has been about just living my normal lifestyle. Cop baiting might be another way to try to define entrapment. But I am not trying to persuade law enforcement or encourage them to investigate a crime that they would not have normally investigated otherwise. You have no proof that I go out of my way in my daily life to bait cops into harassing me. If anything, you should be more concerned about how cops are stepping over legal lines to conduct their fake investigations into my daily living. What about the cops baiting people? They use bait cars, hookers, buy-sell drugs and guns, and have all kinds of tricks into pushing the boundaries of entrapment without overstepping it. Or maybe they might entrap someone and then lie about it in court. Depends on the situation. The bootlickers seem to choose to ignore that cops will bait other people, and that is even more disturbing since cops are supposed to be held to a higher standard. Why don't you talk about all those cops who I supposedly baited and talk to them and ask them if they feel like fools about the situation? Ask them what I did that was so obscene that they had to start investigating me. I try to identify every one of these cops whom I have on camera. You are perfectly welcome to track them down and find out if they even remember the situation. My guess is that it's just another part of their duty, like what they're approaching everybody else to investigate. The whole theme is that I am the cop bait. There is nothing special about my daily life where I go out of my way to attract cops' attention. I am just the Copbait. I live in a car and travel to different cities when I'm not stuck waiting on a court date. There used to be a time where people could travel freely without their freedoms and liberties under peril. Just read Lewis and Clark journals and you'll see how free and open their party was to get across the lands. They could hunt anything they wanted, every day. There was no hunting season. The creation of hunting season was just one of the early stages of criminalizing the poor. To copbait is simply be homeless and in the public eye more often. I think I should have some credit for actually spending excessive time in the public eye, because this increases my chances of being the copbait. I actually blend in better in a lot of areas with the locals compared to other types of people and still get investigated in order to do stuff by the cops that I don't normally want to do. Increased laws against the poor have created more cop-baiting situations. The laws get stricter and stricter as our population grows. It very much could turn into a bubble at some point. Clearly, the courts are taking an increasingly tougher stance against people like me by using the jargon of cop-baiting as their excuse to convict people, communists. This is scary. The accusers blame me for being investigated by cops. It's like you punching me and telling me to get out of the way of your fist. The Constitution protects your rights, but does not give any. Okay, you have to assert your rights when the need arises. Unfortunately, the legal system wants to use all these labels that have no constitutional merit against you. They can't find in the Constitution anything to suit their own agenda, so they start making up problems and using their increased authority to enforce bullying laws against us.